Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Deep Dives at the Petersen Automotive Museum. Today we're going to be talking about our 1937 Delage D-8 120 Coupe Aerosport. During the mid-1930s, Delage came out with a D-8 120 chassis, unusually long for the day, with a straight 8 4.5 liter engine that happened to be mated to a Coutal electromagnetic transmission, the kind of transmission that you could shift gears without using the clutch. The chassis came in different lengths that could accommodate sporting coachwork, touring coachwork, and luxury coachwork. This particular car is built on one of the unusually long chassis that you wouldn't think would be right for a sports car, but in looking at it, you wouldn't imagine that it could be anything else. This Delage was styled by Letourneur et Marchand, a French coach building company, or carrossier. Now back in these days, what you were buying from Delage, or what was available from Delage, was just the chassis if you wanted it. And you would take that chassis, which was complete with the engine and running gear. Whatever coach builder you chose would build the body according to your own individual requirements. If you wanted a 4-door, you got one. If you wanted a 2-door coach, you got one. If you wanted a 2-door cabriolet or roadster, it was yours. But Letourneur et Marchand made a very small series of only about a dozen Coupe Aerosports. And we have to remember that during the 1930s, a lot of people were looking to the sky for their inspiration. And they were coming out with unusually sleek vehicles. Whether or not they were scientifically aerodynamic really wasn't the point. It was just that they looked good. They had sloping rear ends, and some of them even had a hint of a fin on the back, just like this Delage does. This Delage also is unique in the fact that it has pillarless styling. I think people remember in 1949 when the Buick Riviera was introduced, it had hardtop styling, which meant that when you put the front side and the rear side windows down, there wasn't what they call a B-pillar that would obstruct your outward vision. It was completely open, so it looked light and airy and a little bit sexy. Well, Delage and Letourneur et Marchand had a car that did that back in the mid-1930s. They built a very small series of only about a dozen of these. Some of them had fender lines that started in the front, blended into running boards on the side, and then finished on the rear fender. Others had separate front and rear fenders with just a step area for you to get in the car if you needed to, because the car was so low, you really didn't need it, but it was, in a way, it was a tradition that a lot of people stuck with, because sometimes they thought that running boards just had to be there. Earliest Volkswagens even had running boards. Getting into the Delage, one would open the doors that are hinged at the back. And it's actually easier to get into a car that's positioned this way, because you sat in and then you swung your legs around. It was a lot more convenient. The problem with suicide doors was, and in a way the name kind of gives it away, is that if the door was ajar and you were going down the road at a pretty good clip, the wind stream might just pull it open and pull it back and even pull it off sometimes. So they don't do that anymore except on certain very high-end cars. I think Rolls-Royce is one of them, but they have a lockout mechanism for protection. Something else that's interesting about the coachwork from this era are what they call trafficators, which are essentially turn signals that pop out of a slot in either the front or rear of the body and then light up. And then when you turn them off, they fall right back into their little housings. It was just one of those styling flourishes. Along with the drop belt line that was becoming so popular, a lot of the themes that found their way into ladies' fashion also tended to find their way into cars during the 1930s. Because that was the time, the golden age of the Concours d'Elegance, when the ladies and the gentlemen and maybe their children and even their pets would be outfitted to match the car. So they would drive up to a long row of judges, park the car, get out of it, walk around the car, essentially presenting it to the judges and presenting it to all the fans in the bleachers. And these concours were very, very well attended, and a lot of very wealthy Europeans would plan their summers around the different concours that went from one seacoast vacation spot to another. But as sleek as these cars were, they didn't age very well in the day. And as new as this car was in 1937 was as old as it seemed in 1947. The day had come and gone for the genuine Art Deco French coachwork, but enough of them were salvaged from junkyards and scrap drives to survive, to live another day. In fact, this one was discovered in a French barn. It literally was a barn discovery, and it is now painted its original colors. When it was discovered, it was determined that this gold and maroon scheme were original to the car because it had never been repainted. So it was just put back to where it was when it was brand new, and today gives people the perfect idea of what motoring and luxury must have been like during the 1930s. Thank you for joining me on another deep dive at the Petersen Automotive Museum. Look forward to seeing you next time.